Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
Yes. 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest. It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Thanks a lot for being with us here on this Friday edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. A little more snow on the ground out there today. Hope you're managing to get around okay and be safe. Be careful out there, everybody, if you're traveling. It's I'm sure it's a little slick, but glad to have you with us on the this Friday. Help keep everybody warm. Everybody love everybody. And that's from, what's that from, John? Daggone. What's the name of that movie with Will Ferrell?
Oh, Tropical. Is it Talladega Nights? I don't know.
No, Tropical.
Oh, it's the Tropic Semi-Pro.
Yeah.
That is one I have seen. I've seen several Will Ferrell movies. Not all of them, I don't think, but I've seen enough to recognize.
Well, good deal. On the program today, our good friend Bob Kravitz will join us from bobkravitz.com. Zach Ostman from the Indy Star, and Todd Leary will join us as well as Indiana prepares to take on Wisconsin tonight at the Kohl Center in Madison, a place where they have gone 0 for their last 27. Unbelievable. We'll talk about that and much more, of course. Appreciate everybody joining us on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. I hope you guys are out having a good one. Fred, Las Vegas, Larry, Scott from Owensboro, Drew, 4 more inches of snow and counting here in Bloomington. Like I said, be careful if you don't have to go out and go around. Just sit here and listen to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Fred pointing out Christian Lander, 19 points last night, 4 assists, 3 steals in 30 minutes for Western Kentucky versus New Mexico State. Good for him. Great to see. Kid that was pried out of high school a year too early by Lil Rhodey because he was desperate. How about Dalton Connect at Tennessee? Went from being an unknown to a probable All-American, just chucking up 30 points a night here and there. That's a player Indiana could have used, huh? Lots of games last night on the schedule. So an upset here and there. Let's see. Memphis went down. Get over to those scores. Yeah, Michigan State, they win at home. How'd you like that one, John? By only 10.
Yeah, that was tough. I had them winning by 11. The spread was 10.5 for me. And actually, I was surprised they were that close to covering it because late in that game, they were only up 4 or 5 points, but evidently they were able to.
Well, I'm surprised you would give them, it's not like they've had a year where they've been great. Minnesota's not actually been terrible either.
Michigan State is kind of a lot like Indiana, where I feel like they've been more disappointing considering their expectations at the beginning of the season. But they also seem to do really well against teams where they're supposed to take care of business, especially at home. They don't do so hot on the road. So I just thought they would, take care of business. And, I mean, they did. They won by 10, which is a good enough margin, but they didn't cover the spread for me.
Michigan, they get beat at home by Illinois, 88-73. Florida Atlantic gets a home win against Wichita State, 86-77. Washington State goes on the road to beat Stanford. Gonzaga gets a win. They're struggling. It's looking like they may miss the tournament this year. We'll see as the season goes on. Apparently Bill Walton growled like a cougar. I missed that one. But Indiana tonight on the road up in Madison, Wisconsin. South Florida on the road at Memphis, down 20, and comes back to win. And after escaping several games with last-second shots, number 10 Memphis finally got burned. Kayshawn Pryor made a go-ahead free throw with 4 seconds left, and South Florida rallied from a 20-point deficit to stun the Tigers 74-73 last night. Pryor finished with 21 points, 10 boards, and reserve Selton Miguel led South Florida with 23 points, going 5 of 10 from behind the arc by himself. So that's a big win for them. I've got a cold, it sounds like, man. Feels like. John Calipari reaches 400 wins with Kentucky basketball as they beat Mississippi State 90-77 on Wednesday night. Tonight, like I said, Indiana travels to Madison, a place where they have not had very good luck in the last 27 tries at the Kohl Center. But ironically, Indiana still leads this series 97-80. So you got that going for you. Looking forward to talking to Bob Kravitz. Lots to talk about besides Indiana. You've got the Pacers, who made the big-time trade earlier in the week. IU right now is 94th in the KenPom. 94th. But worse, they're projected to finish. Right now, if you go to KenPom, he has them projected to lose 12 out of the remaining 13 games. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know that I agree with that, looking at that. And a couple of those games are already 50-50 games, what I call 50-50. Where is my KenPom? And some of those games I'm like, but even with that, I see only 3 that I disagreed with. So Indiana's going to have to make one hell of a run to change those fortunes. And 94th in KenPom. Not only are they 94th in KenPom, they're behind such basketball powerhouses as Georgia, who fired Tom Crean just a season or two ago. How about North Texas at number 62? Butler's up to 64. UC Irvine, as I go down through the list. Bradley. St. Bonaventure, Samford, not Stanford, but Samford. Samford is a little school in, I think, Georgia, Birmingham, maybe, Alabama. I can't remember if it may be in Alabama. I can't remember. But a little small school. St. Bonaventure has like, is that the school? I think they have like less than 2,000 students, undergrads. That's Northern Iowa. No, Northern Iowa was 99th, so they're beyond Indiana. Indiana's right in front of Akron and Louisiana Tech. But a lot of people on both sides of the fence on, there you go, Jared, Alabama. I knew it was down there somewhere. There is definitely more parity in college basketball than there has ever been. John's brother went to Samford. Yeah, I knew someone that went there. Russell says the state of the basketball program is dire. It is at the moment, but the great thing is, in today's world of college basketball, that is a quick fix. if you have the right fixer. Todd Leary will be with us a little later in the program. We'll talk to him. Of course, he has become a little more of the voice of reason, one of the voices of reason when you talk about these things. As is Zach. We'll see what their thoughts are. How's everything going with everybody? What kind of an easy weekend. Indiana has a game on Friday, not on Saturday, and it's away. Therefore, I expect that you won't have to travel to Bloomington. Jared asking if Indiana was to go 1-12 to finish their season, how does Woodson keep his job? That's simple. Very, very simple. You take 4, add it to 10, add it to 15, and then add 12.6. And you know what you come up with? $41.6 million in dead money that would be paid to coaches to not coach. That's how he keeps his job, in my opinion, because the $4 million was paid to Tom Crean to go away. $10 million was paid to Archie Miller to go away. And then they would have to turn around and pay $12.6 million for Mike to not coach. That's how. The embarrassment of it, the financial irresponsibility of it. Who's accountable for all that money? You know, the 15 is what Tom Allen is being paid. So accountability. You know what? And then he asked, how does Scott keep his job? That's beyond my pay grade. Indiana has been called a good old boys club, and I can't disagree with a lot of that. A lot of hiring from within. And when you don't have success, somebody has to be accountable. At some point, someone has to be held accountable. Bob Kravitz from BobKravitz.com is going to join us next. We got plenty coming up here on this beautiful White Friday. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. What are you laughing about?
I'm laughing at some of the comments.
Like which one?
Five Lefts has just had it today. He's done.
Oh, I feel for you, brother. I feel for you, man.
I've got to say, too, like, I understand the frustration, but it still blows my mind that people think that Woodson is going anywhere. It is just not happening.
He's not going anywhere.
You all see what Louisville's dealing with Kenny Payne, and they haven't done anything? And their money situation is a lot more manageable than Indiana's, and they haven't pulled the plug on him. They're waiting until at least April because they need to save $2 million in a buyout for him. And even then, there's no real sign that he will get fired. He may get a third year, which honestly, I think would be asinine for their program, considering he's only won 10 games in a season and a half. I mean, who knows? But the one thing I do get, though, like we are in an era now where college basketball, like you can turn something around like that. So I get why people expect results quicker.
You mean like take a team that's 13-21 prior to your arrival and then have them go 15-1?
Yes, you're talking about Ole Miss.
Yes.
So yeah, I get it. Good morning, Mr. Kravitz.
Morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Just waiting to go outside and build a snowman.
There you go. It's it's looking pretty nasty up here. I guess it snowed last night.
It did.
Apparently.
Where are you at? Are you in Indy right now, Kravitz?
Yeah,
Or
I'm in
somewhere
Carmel.
else?
I'm in Carmel.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, another lovely day.
And this is only the first third of winter we're in. We still have another couple of months until spring still.
Thanks for pointing that out.
It was kind of a slow start, though. I mean, it was very mild until
Yeah.
this past
I mean,
week.
the last 3 winters have been really mild. Seems like.
All right, here we go, guys.
House-made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop, Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this snowy Friday. And speaking of snowy, our snowman, Bob Kravitz, joins us now from bobkravitz.com. Bob, I've got 3 names just to say. Jim Irsay, Pascal Siakam, and Mike Woodson.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said about the 3 of those human beings.
Yeah, a lot going on as well. Of course, Jim Irsay, we're hoping that he manages to get through whatever it is that he is dealing with. The Colts have said that he's dealing with a respiratory illness, which very well may be the case. Not sure if that is related to an issue he had over a month ago in December.
Right.
But obviously I read your piece and agree with it. I'm surprised the NFL doesn't step in a situation like this, because they step in a lot of other situations. And so I'm surprised that they don't step in and say, hey, something needs to be done.
The thing is that it was it wasn't like he was in his car like he was a couple of years ago where he potentially could hurt somebody. This was a victimless crime, unless you count Jim Irsay as the victim, which he most certainly is. I don't know if the league should step in. It's not like a gambling situation or anything like that. I mean, this is a personal situation for Jim, but Jim is the guy who said, let's get rid of Dan Snyder. And
that's what I was actually referring to more so, is because of, and you brightly pointed out some of the decisions that have been made. You're like, was that a reason why?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is with Jim, you don't know when he's just being quirky Jim, and you don't know when he's actually altered on drugs. And I think sometimes decisions have been inspired by his addled existence, and sometimes he's just weird. Like he made the decision to hire Jeff Saturday last year. We don't know if he was under the influence at the time or if that's just him being really quirky. But that's the thing is, as people who paid about $800 million toward Jim Irsay and that stadium, we have a right to know that the guy running this quasi-public enterprise is in his right mind. And clearly he is not. And I don't say that to be punitive, but it's the reality. And I think if you're a fan, you want to know that the guy who's signing off on the big decisions and sometimes making the big decisions, is in his right mind. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
The trade the Pacers made, to me, that shows that they're serious as ever about being a player in the playoffs, and not that they weren't already, because they've been sitting in fine situation until this injury to Tyrese Halliburton. But they make a trade that really puts them in an even better position, acquiring Pascal Siakam.
Absolutely fabulous trade. Now, the only way this trade doesn't work out for them is if at season's end he decides to go elsewhere. But I like the risk, and it's a risk they're making without giving up any of their top young studs. Jordan Ward was a rotational guy. Bruce Brown wasn't particularly happy in Indy after signing here as a free agent. He was not going to be back next year, quite likely. Those 3 draft picks, it sounds like a lot, but they're all going to be between 15 and 22 in the draft list. So it's not like you're going to be losing any stud players. They've already got a ton of young players. They don't need more draft picks. I thought it was a fantastic trade that will only get better if he decides to stay in Indiana. And the early word is that he is really excited about playing with Halliburton and Miles Turner.
And then Mike Woodson, of course, Indiana travels to Wisconsin tonight, where nothing to do with him. They have had a 27-year run of futility at the Kohl Center, unbelievably. Still lead the series 97. Years? I think it's 27 years now. It's mind-boggling. But they still lead the series 97-80, which is mind-boggling, even more so. But this is a Wisconsin team that is currently leading the Big Ten right now at a 5-1 record.
Yeah, and I don't like what I'm seeing out of Indiana. We talk about it every week. I thought Gabe Cupps played a pretty good game against Purdue, but I don't know what's going on with Xavier Johnson. He just looks like a lost puppy to me. I was very harsh on him in my column the other day. I don't like being harsh on college kids, even though they do get paid these days. It's not like the old days where they just got an education, supposedly. But this guy, he gets a flagrant 2 against, what was it, Rutgers? And then he comes back, he gets benched for Cupps, and then he does it again. He throws a forearm shiver into Zach Edey, which tells me you're not really smart. Yeah. That is not a smart thing to do. If Zach Edey's in the mood, he's going to put you in tomorrow. So, this is going to be a problem all year unless he figures it out somehow. They don't have a point guard, and that's a real problem in college basketball.
Yeah, if you follow Ken Pom, I was talking about earlier, Indiana right now sitting in the 94th spot, according to Ken Pom. But worse yet, Ken Pom has Indiana projected to lose every game the rest of the season except for a home game with Penn State on February 3rd. So Now that's not necessarily going to happen. But because there's the game with Northwestern at home is a 50-50 game. But Ken Pom's not going to be that far off.
Right.
So even if they win 3 games, it's not going to be a good finish.
No. And I just don't see any improvement with this team. I really don't. And, I didn't realize it until after I got back from the game about 3:00 in the morning the other night that that loss was their worst home loss to Purdue since 1934. That's pretty astounding. I just thought they played, I thought the whole game was crystallized at the end. Purdue leading by 18. The ball's loose on the floor. Khalil Ware kind of gingerly walks over to it, and Zach Edey goes to the floor, dives, and pushes it ahead to Lance Jones. I think right there, obviously Purdue's got a ton more talent, but you just saw, maybe not a ton more talent, but they got more talent. But you just saw there what it means to Purdue, what that game meant to Purdue, what it meant to Edey to finally beat these guys, and why Purdue is the number 2 team in the nation. They play like their hair's on fire.
Yeah, and a couple of even more hair-raising stats. Tom Crean's first 3 years of playing against Purdue when Indiana was 6-25 and
Right.
10 and whatever, they never lost by this margin to Purdue. Those teams that the 6-25 team had 11 underclassmen on it, mostly freshmen, and did not lose by this margin. So that really puts it in perspective for me.
Well, those weren't quite as great a Purdue teams, granted, back when Crean was facing them, but still, that's pretty telling. And look, Mike has lost a lot of games by a lot of points. Somebody could do the statistical breakdown for me, but
they have.
They especially on neutral courts, they have lost by big margins, more so than I can remember with previous coaches, even the sainted Archie Miller. This is the guy who got $1 million a year raise. I would love for Scott Dolson to be my boss. I mean, he gave Woody $1 million for doing next to nothing. He gave Tom Allen all that money with no, with an incredible buyout. I mean, he's just giving money away out there.
And that's who becomes accountable for that, and at what point is there accountability? Because I kept talking. I said, Mike Woodson's not going anywhere. Indiana can't do anything about him right now, because if they even begun to thought about it, the buyout added to the buyout, added to the buyout, added to the buyout comes up to $41.6 million Indiana would be paying with 3 consecutive basketball coaches and a football coach right now.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. You just have to hope that he, as Mike likes to say, get him over the hump, which is what he says every press conference. I just got to get these guys over the hump for my ball club. It was interesting. I don't know if you saw the Dana O'Neill piece in The Athletic, where she suggested that Mike is not the hardest working dude, which I thought, wow, that kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't sourced, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
First time that's been that's been said. I mean,
no, I know. I heard that. I heard that before he ever took the job, that he wasn't a guy who grinded. But look, I mean, he did what they asked of him early on. He got them to the NCAAs, but that's not enough. It's Indiana, and especially in a state where really the epicenter of basketball is located in West Lafayette. That's embarrassing to be that bad. And look, this is a team that's not devoid of talent. I mean, you've got a really good front court. One of the things that drove me crazy in the Purdue game, Jim, was he put Mbako and Ware on the bench with 2 fouls early and never brought him back. I mean, didn't bring him back.
Forgot about him
until the last TV timeout. By then, it was about a 15, 16-point game.
Kind of reminds me of Auburn, the Auburn game.
Yes, very much so. I don't know if Mike's got a 2-foul rule or whatever, but it ain't working. This isn't like the NBA where your second string guys can really play. I mean, their bench. I mean, they got some guys who can play a little bit, but if you want to compete with Zach Edey and those guys, you got to keep your best players on the floor and take your chances. I mean, the game is getting away. Keep them in there.
And I've seen people say, well, wait, everyone knew there was going to be a learning curve. I'm like, no, I didn't. Why would there be a learning curve? And when you're paying someone that kind of money, there shouldn't be a learning curve. No. Why would there be? Been around, but it's not like if this is your first job, maybe, but it's not. So it is what it is, and it's not going to change. And Indiana fans can jump up on this side or whatever, but I expect to see zero change regardless.
Well, that's a positive outlook, and I agree with you completely. I just think I don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I think this is kind of a lost season, and I think the clock starts ticking on Woodson, like you say. You know, the buyout and the buyout and the buyout. But I think as far as the fans are concerned, he fails to make the NCAA tournament, it's going to get loud around here again.
Absolutely. Switching to Alabama football only because I have got this thing I always like to say is you have to have the right people in the right position. And Indiana has kind of had a problem of not having done that, not just in basketball and football. I mean, you go back, you can look at times. And right now, Alabama, their head coach is a former offensive coordinator from Indiana, but there's potential. There's already 5 former IU football staffers from the same team that is now running Alabama, the pinnacle of college football, but they're in different positions. And then Julia pointing out that David Cooper, who played football at IU in the mid-2000s, 212 to 214, is currently Georgia's director of recruiting and interviewing for the same position at Alabama. How funny would that be?
Yeah, no, that's wild. I mean, I'll tell you what, Tom Allen picked some really good people to come in here a couple of years ago. I mean, Kalen DeBoer I mean, at the time he was a rising star, but to think that guy was in Des Moines or Sioux Falls or whatever.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They had to talk him into taking a job outside of Sioux Falls, and he's had this incredible run of success. Now, if he can find himself a quarterback, God bless him. You know, I don't know what the situation. I mean, Milroe is hitting the transfer portal. It's not the most enviable job in college football, following a legend, but I think DeBoer's the right guy to do it. I think he'll be very solid, and he'll continue most of the success that Nick Saban enjoyed.
Yeah, I do too, because mainly because he has the right personality. He does. The moment it just never seems too big for him. He just goes about his job the way he does every day, working hard and nose to the grindstone. He doesn't get too high. You know, he reminds me of Nick Saban in that way. Yeah. You didn't see Nick Saban jumping up, too high or too low. He was always even keeled because he had the experience and knew that got to stay right here, got to keep your head in the game. And I see that as Kalen DeBoer. Yeah, no,
I think he's going to do a great job at Alabama. I really do. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Russell says that Indiana is going to risk losing Liam McNeely. No one's going to fire Mike Woodson.
No, Mike Woodson's not going anywhere, folks.
And I don't think that if you think that I'm saying that he needs to be fired, that's not my job to say. I just point out certain truths that are in the world. But no, he's not going anywhere. So I'm not saying that he is. And so don't misconstrue.
No, he's good for another year or two. But they've got to start making more progress. I mean, this is Indiana, for crying out loud. They, just getting to the play-in game and getting to the second round, it ain't enough. It ain't enough. So, this may end up being a lost year, but maybe McNeely makes all the difference. I don't know, but the clock is ticking on Mike Woodson. There's no question about that.
Definitely the clock is on. What's up next for you? Indiana plays tonight on the road.
Right.
No NFL right now other than news, and the Pacers are playing.
Right. I'll be concentrating on Pascal Siakam. They'll be back in town, I believe, Monday or Tuesday morning. Well, Monday sometime. So I'll be doing a lot on the Pacers next week and Siakam specifically and what he's going to bring to this team, which is a lot. Hey, one other thing, if people do read bobkravitz.com, if they could check out my Monday piece about Scott Pollard, the former Indiana Pacer.
Absolutely.
You were nice enough to mention it the other day and retweet it. But I thought it was a pretty good piece by my humble standards. And
first of all your stuff is great.
Yeah, well,
I read all of it, and I should retweet all of it to be honest.
It's okay.
But that one just really there was just so much to that when it really it hits home.
Yeah, he needs a heart transplant, and it's going to be hard for him because he's 6'10", 6'11", 300 pounds. He needs a big heart, a big engine to pump to keep him alive. And
and you don't think about that the different when someone is in that situation, that it's not just a heart they need a specific type of heart,
right, with a specific blood type, and he's got the most typical blood type, which is gonna diminish his options even more because there's so many people in line who've got O positive.
Yeah, and I was hoping that that happens for him because I cannot imagine being in a situation where you're waiting for something like that. It's different. It's
different than a kidney or a liver.
Well, it's even having cancer or anything, which is horrible. You kind of know what that situation is. This is a situation where there's hope, but
you don't know. The waiting is so hard. I mean, just not knowing and understanding that your life is in the hands of somebody you don't know who tragically has got to lose their life in order to give you life, which is, one of the things that Scott and Dawn or his wife are really working on is organ transplant. And go to your local DMV or whatever we call it here in Indiana, BMV, and become a donor. I am. Not that anybody's going to want any of my parts because they're all screwed up, but I think it's a heroic thing to do.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you. There's your stat for you. Woodson has coached 88 games, 2.5 years in so far. Those games, Indiana has lost 15 or more points 15 times.
Wow.
17% of the time.
That's not good.
That's a high number.
That's a lot of getting your ass kicked right there.
Yes, it is. Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. I can't thank you enough, brother.
Thank you, buddy. Be well.
Go out and shovel the driveway.
Not a chance.
We will see you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow and reading that content. Great stuff. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Zach Osterman joins us a little bit later from the Indy Stars. Todd Leary as well in the next hour.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for yeah, but Dusty May hasn't quite played the schedule.
Dusty May is kind of, I don't want to say he won't be a great coach. I think he is a good coach.
Oh, I think he's a good coach now, but I don't
everything's
know that.
Based off of his one run. And they're also kind of not living up to expectations so far this year.
They're okay. They won. They beat Wichita State last night. They're in the top. They've been in the top 25 all year.
Yeah, but if he was doing what he was doing right now in Indiana and one of his losses was the Florida Gulf Coast, people would be pissed.
Yes, but
even though people are pissed at Mike Woodson, He has 0 bad losses so far. I'm talking about losses to anyone in the non-conference that is not worth being, getting beat by. I'm not talking about losses in the Big Ten.
But you can't compare Indiana to. Yeah, there's just a difference.
I think we look at other teams differently because they're not currently coaching Indiana.
I'm not saying Dusty May would come in and be a savior. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. As a matter of fact, he would not be my first choice to coach
he wouldn't be
at
mine.
Indiana.
He may be number.
But I do think you need a college coach, a coach that is more than familiar with the college game, that coaches to win college games, that does not try to force a way of thinking that does not work, that has not worked. I sent out a tweet yesterday that Indiana under Mike Woodson, I think it's been a house of cards built around Trace Jackson Davis. And what's he going to do next year when Kalel Ware and Mackenzie Mbako are gone?
I think there's a fair chance that both of those guys don't go anywhere.
Well, that's funny since
Mackenzie Mbako can transfer, and technically Kalel Ware can too, but unless he gets a waiver from the NCAA, he'll have to sit out. So I don't think
they're not going to need waiver schmaver. They're not going to need waivers anymore. NCAA
it makes it so hard. It's so ridiculous how that's. Oh well. Here we go. A few seconds left.
9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. How are you doing? Zach Ostman joining us in the next hour, as is Todd Leary. He's got a new website out, myjumpshot.com, where he will attempt to help whomever with their jump shot. We'll look forward to talking to him about that, as well as everything else that's going on. How's everybody doing? What's the schedule for tonight in men's college basketball? There's a lot of games.
Not a lot of big-time games. The only top 25 team in play tonight is Indiana or Wisconsin against Indiana, I should say.
What is today? The 19th? Fairleigh Dickinson plays tonight. Just kidding. Indiana, Wisconsin, right? The only Big Ten game on the docket. That game is at 8:30. Is that right? I was thinking it was at 7:30.
No, it's an 8:30 tip.
Yeah,
you may be thinking 7:30 Central Time, which is where the game is played.
8:30 on Fox Sports 1 from the Kohl Center in Madison, Wisconsin.
For all you anti-peacockers, you don't have to worry about that tonight.
There you go. It's on regular cable.
That's right.
Of some sort that you're paying for, one way or the other. Let's see, top 25. Any top 25 games tonight? Yeah, Georgetown at Xavier.
Earlier I said the only top 25 matchup is Wisconsin. The only top 25 team in action is Wisconsin.
You are correct. And then tomorrow, though, it gets after it. Baylor's at Texas, Marquette at St. John's, Rick Pitino, who has 10 new players at St. John's. 10. They're doing quite well. Number 18, Creighton, goes to Seton Hall tomorrow. Virginia Tech at North Carolina State. Louisville travels to Wake Forest. Penn State is at Ohio State. Lil Rhodey. Oh, wow. Lil Rhodey travels back to Dayton That'll be interesting to see how that goes. Please, everybody, welcome back Lil Rooney. Is that how that's going to go tomorrow? That was the question, John.
It'd probably be more like crickets. I hope they have a cricket sound effect in their at their disposal.
Number 15, Oklahoma traveling to Cincinnati. See, scan down through there. Number 6, Tennessee hosting Alabama. Ooh, fresh off of Nate Oates shoving a Missouri player of sorts. He apologized for it. It was no big deal. It was just like, get out of here, dude. It was one of those. It wasn't like a two-handed shove. It was a one-hand kind of a, hey, get out of here. Go get in your own huddle, which I had no problem with, really. Number 5, Houston hosting Central Florida. Number 19, TCU hosting number 24, Iowa State tomorrow. There's a lot of games tomorrow. A whole bunch of them. Number 4, North Carolina travels to Boston College. Number 12, Arizona hosting UCLA. UCLA not having a good year either. They're struggling a bit this season. Going down to, man, I mean, there must be like 60 games tomorrow. There are tons. Who isn't playing? Evansville's at Drake. I mean, it just doesn't stop. Number 7, Duke hosting Pitt. Number 1, UConn traveling to Villanova. Number 13, Auburn hosting number 22, Ole Miss. How about that game tomorrow night at 8:30? There's a great game to get in and be warm. Check out tomorrow night. That'll be interesting to watch. That's a tough place to go play at Auburn. See what those guys can get done. Those are the late night games. Grand Canyon at Seattle. But Grand Canyon is like, I think they're in the 50s or something in Ken Palm. That's weird. Unbelievable. What are your weekend plans with Indiana on the road? If the NFL is the playoffs are happening. We can't forget about that. This weekend, last weekend, you had the wild card games. The Cardinals in the NFL fire their CFO and 2 VPs amid a shakeup. Ohio State about to hire former NFL coach Bill O'Brien as their offensive coordinator, as Ryan Day wants to make some changes, stop calling the plays. O'Brien served as New England's the Patriots offensive coordinator in 2023. He has an extensive experience as a play caller and developer of quarterbacks at the college and NFL levels. He worked with Bryce Young at Alabama, Tom Brady, and Deshaun Watson during some of their best seasons. Young won the Heisman Trophy in 2021 under O'Brien, and Alabama finished in the top 10 in scoring offense in both of O'Brien's seasons as coordinator there, averaging 40 points and 41 points per game. Ohio State's offense dipped this season to 30 points per game, down from 44. But a big part of that had to be the quarterback. I mean, they had a very middling quarterback. Even though they had Marvin Harrison Jr., it doesn't matter. If you don't have a guy that can really wing it, and they did not have a quarterback that they had normally, of the stature that they have normally had. But in the wake of 3 consecutive losses to Michigan, time for a change. 3's enough. 3's the number. So we'll see how that does. And you've got the big change in the Big Ten with Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama. Now you've got Arizona's coach moving up there. What's Washington going to be like? That affects Indiana. That could be huge for Indiana football. What if they're able to, what if Washington is just not quite the same as, which of course they're not going to be the same as they were this year without question, but what's Russell talking about? Who was down by 20 at half and lost by 21? I'll let John figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know what he's referring to. That's an old comment. From what I can tell, I don't see it. That's from 20 minutes ago.
Well, I understand that, but I don't know what it was referring to. I just happen to see it now. It's because I'm talking so much. But yeah, the Big Ten next year, Indiana, UCLA, they've been okay. It's going to be extraordinarily difficult for them to go out there and win. Let's be clear about that in week 3 of the college football season. But hey, I don't know what they're going to be like. You can't predict that. They're a whole new team. Virtually a whole new offense, a whole new way of running things under Kurt Signetti. You know, they're going to start off 2-0 without question. But can they get to, even if they were to lose to UCLA on the road, you come back home and they have a chance to be decent next year, at least from a record standpoint, without question. But you can't predict that until we see what the personnel is actually like. But it will be fun, without question. Without question. Yes, sir?
Break.
All right. We've got to take a break. Up next, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joins us in this next hour. Got that and plenty more coming to you here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore and Remax Realty. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right.
Man, it is just a bright white out there. Crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy, man.
It is crazy, man. Excuse me. Here's my short take about Indiana's game at Wisconsin tonight. They're going to cover the spread. I want to say they're going to win because I feel like something crazy might happen, but here's why I think they'll cover. They've responded well after every beatdown they've had. And that's why I think they're going to cover the spread, which, again, that's not really saying anything, I guess, but if you're a betting person and you want to bet on this game, take Indiana to cover. I think it's 11-ish right now. Let me pull Zach in here real quick. Hey, Zach, what's going on?
Hey, how we doing?
Doing good. Jimbo, we got 10 seconds. Here we go.
Or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday, January 19th. Thank you for being with us. Very snowy out there. Zachary, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How about you?
Can't complain. I know you're a griller, a chef extraordinaire, and I was at Chop Shop last night, and I picked up this jalapeno cherry barbecue sauce, and it is daggone delicious. I already had to break into it last night, and it was very, very good. But a blanket of snow out there here in Bloomington, Indiana, traveling on the road up north to Wisconsin, a place where it's been like going to hell, actually, for them for the last 27 attempts, which is mind-boggling. And Indiana still leads this series 97-80, even though they've had the road troubles there. But what are your expectations with what we've seen here of late? Indiana seems kind of discombobulated as a team. I know that there was a stat out yesterday that I saw that with Gabe Cupps in the lineup, they're actually one of the more efficient five-man rotations in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Indiana's in a weird place as a team. On the one hand, I think, it feels like you can see, spurts, you can see moments when it feels like Indiana's kind of putting things together, but they can't sustain it consistently. They can't stay connected for, long stretches, in games against, Kansas, to be fair. I think they were, I think they played well for most of that game, but, the Purdue game, obviously Auburn, UConn, some of those non-conference games, it feels like when competition is better, they struggle to just kind of stay connected, stay tight, stay tough. It's just kind of, it sort of feels like it's a race to Indiana figuring out, the formula that works and whether they can get there before the season gets away from them, from a quality wins perspective and a tournament perspective and that kind of stuff. And I really don't know, the answer to that, but I do know that they're kind of running out of time. And, if you look at this stretch upcoming in particular, 4 out of your next 6 games are on the road, and they're all 4, quality win opportunities, probably quad 1 win opportunities, every one of them. It does feel like it's kind of got to happen soon.
Yeah, and with all of that, no matter what, the talk, the complaining, Mike Woodson is not going anywhere. So that is something I think people need to get accustomed to, at least right now. That's not something that's going to happen. So the conversation needs to not even be that. What can they do to be better? What do they need to do to be better? We all know that the guard play has really hurt this team, and part of that has been talent not being where it needs to be. Also, a big part of that has been leadership by the guy that people expected to be at least a leader, if not the leader, that really has been kind of quite the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, we had a long conversation about Xavier Johnson on our podcast last night, and I think where I kind of settled on it, like Mike Nislik, my co-host, sort of said, if you were Mike Woodson, what would you do? And I said the first thing I think I would do is I would just try to have a frank conversation with Xavier Johnson and just sort of say, like, what do you want out of the next 2 months, essentially? Because that's pretty much all Indiana's guaranteed at this point. The Big Ten tournament is the weekend, the weekend at the end of spring break rather than the beginning of spring break. So we're basically right at about 2 months left in the season in terms of games that are guaranteed to everybody. No postseason, no berth in this or opportunity in that, whatever. Just have a conversation with him, just a very frank conversation, and say what do you want out of the rest of your college career? And, can that meet somewhere what we need from you? Because you're right, the leadership piece. And I mean, obviously the leadership piece takes on a big sort of chunk of this conversation when 2 flagrant fouls in 3 games and, everything surrounding that. But, there's also just the sheer productivity. He had that game against Ohio State where he had 18 points. I don't think he had a single turnover. Since then, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 9 turnovers, 6 steals in 3 games. That's just not for a team that is already, fairly offensively limited at times. It can't afford to have one of its most creative players, a player who needs the ball in his hands to be effective. It can't afford to have that player so completely, kind of ineffective in games. And so, if there is I don't want to say a positive, because I don't think Indiana fans would ever take losing to Purdue at home as a positive. If there is anything that Indiana can take out of Tuesday night, and this is about Xavier Johnson, it's about Khalil Ware, it's about Trey Galloway, it's about Gabe Cupps, it's about anybody who's going to have a meaningful hand in this going forward. Losing a game like that, the way that Indiana lost that game, should be cause for some soul searching, and it should be cause for a little bit of, again, maybe sort of a similar conversation. What do we want out of this season, and are we capable? Are we capable of getting connected enough? Are we tough enough? Are we, collectively stubborn enough to go demand that? Because I do think Indiana has, the raw talent to win some of these games that we're talking about. But I think that, what you have when you have a team that maybe doesn't have that strong leadership core that it had a year ago, that is younger, and it is younger. I mean, people say, oh, well, they have an experienced backcourt. It does, look, the whole roster is younger. They're comfortably outside the top 200 in both Division I experience and minutes continuity on KenPom. It is a young team. And it's young in years, and it's young in years together. And that's where I think when you talk about staying connected, it's not like, oh, do they even like each other? I think they like each other fine. I think they try to stand up for each other. I think they try to have each other's backs. They haven't played a lot of basketball together. And I think that shows sometimes when things get tough and they sort of struggle to just stay tight and, stay together and not start chasing leads or, putting in panicky possessions or making mistakes or whatever. This Purdue game kind of needs to be that wake up for everybody a little bit, and we'll see if it is.
And does that include the coaching staff? Does that some things that they need to have that same conversation? It sounds a lot like the Billy Bean, David Justice conversation from Moneyball, which is kind of the same thing. Hey, what do you want from this? I want the best that you got left. etc. But does that same conversation need to be had with the coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that yes, but I think the flip side is the coaching staff is probably always having that conversation. Like I think I remember talking to Todd Lickliter years ago, and I remember having this conversation with him, and obviously on a much smaller scale, realizing how it sort of mirrored my experience riding Little Five as opposed to coaching Little Five. When you're an athlete, you're so focused on yourself because the whole message is like, I need to find a way to do my job to the best of my ability. I need to just be absolutely thorough and effective. I need to work hard. I need to give everything. And so often, what you're told is don't do somebody else's job, do your job. If you do your job and you trust him to do his job and you trust him to do his job and everybody can have that, then the whole thing will work. It's when you stop trusting each other and you suddenly feel like, oh, I got to go put out this fire over here because I don't think he's going to be able to do it. But then that means I'm not doing what I need to do over here. And then suddenly the whole thing breaks down. When you're an athlete, you're so focused on yourself. You're focused on your role, your preparation, taking care of yourself, everything. When you're a coach, the physical stress obviously isn't there. But the mental stress is much greater because you are the one who has to worry about everything. You are the one who, again, to use like a Little Five analogy, and forgive me, this is a little bit, I know it's a little bit tilted, but I was always very at peace on race day as a rider. I had that ability to just sort of like be calm, be centered, trust my training, and just kind of accept that whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And then the first time I coached a race, it was the most chaotic thing I'd ever experienced around Little Five. And I was like, what is this? What happened? And I realized it's because when you're a rider, everyone's saying, just worry about you. We'll take care of this. We'll go get this for you. We'll keep everybody away from you. We'll make sure you got your food, your water, your this, your that. We'll get everything over to the track for you. Just worry about you. When you're the coach, the reason it's so stressful is because you're the one who's telling the riders, I'll take care of that. I got it. Don't worry. And so you're the one who is just moving everywhere from 8 a.m. until the end of the race, basically 7 a.m. until the end of the race. And my point in this with basketball coaches, I agree that, like, yes, the coaching staff probably needs to have some of the same sort of honest self-reflection after the Purdue game. But I think you have to do that as a coach kind of all the time, because you are always reflecting as a coach, because it's your job to manage the whole. And if you aren't worrying about the whole, if you aren't worrying about everything and how it all fits together, and how this guy's growth, Mackenzie Mbako's had the ball in his hands in ball screen situations more often the last couple 3 games. Well, why is that? Mike Woodson was probably thinking about that a month ago, and he just felt like Mackenzie Mbako was building toward it. Now he's there. Mike Woodson's more comfortable with it, and so they put it in. The point I'm trying to make is, as a coach, you really should be kind of going through that process all the time. I think what's maybe more important, forgive this rambling answer, but what I think is in some ways maybe more important in a moment like this, is the coach knowing how to guide that self-reflection within his roster, and how to, what conversations to have with which players, to know which guys maybe need an arm around the shoulder, which guys need, a boot in the backside, which guys are going to respond if I go challenge them and I call them out in front of the team and I yell at them and whatever, and which guys are going to respond if it's, hey, it's a quiet word in my office, just to settle you down, or to, reinforce a point or whatever. I think that's where, in a time like this, where I do think, listen, the flip side to all this is you can't sit there and rub gravel through your hair all day. Like, you still got practice, you still got film, you still got to get ready for the next game. So this whole thing, this whole process we're talking about, it will have needed to happen fairly quickly and fairly organically. But I think that where a coach is involved and a staff is involved is knowing how to, sort of manage and navigate and frankly steer that kind of self-reflection, both individually and as a collective group, if that makes any sense.
And then now we're in this age where you don't even know the roster you're going to have from year to year. Next year doesn't matter at this moment, but trying to get the guys that you currently have on the same page at the same time and without having to worry about what's going to happen next year. But that's always something that's in your mind because you're trying to balance both depending upon where you are in the season. And right now, Indiana, they're battling to get to the end of the season to have a positive end to this year, and I know that that's a tough balancing act for whatever coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where this is such a cliche, but there's a reason why every coach in every sport across the world preaches the idea of just one day at a time, one game at a time. I think my favorite version of the cliche is, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. You don't, if you start, thinking about the whole thing, and, you and I are at liberty to sit here and say, hey, 4 of Indiana's next 6 are on the road, but Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio State, Purdue, these would all be quad 1 wins. These would all be signature wins. Go out and get any one of these. If you can get 2 of them, then suddenly the whole conversation, especially if you could hold serve with those 2 home games packed in the middle, the whole conversation around this team shifts. And suddenly, you're 7-4 in the Big Ten, and they'd be 16-7 overall. They'd be, getting into those tournament conversations. We wouldn't be sitting here and saying, boy, we don't know what this team's about. We would have an idea of what it's about because it would prove it in these games. We can have these conversations. Coaches behind closed doors can have the planning meetings that say, you're working ahead on the Wisconsin scout. You're working ahead on the Illinois scout. Again, like when you make a tweak, like putting the ball in Mackenzie Mbako's hands in ball screen situations. That's not something you just came up with in the middle of the night. That's something that was probably discussed weeks ago and worked toward and built toward. But when you're with your players, there's a reason why every coach, like I said, every coach in every sport across the world says one game at a time, one day at a time, one practice at a time. Because if you start trying to skip steps, if you start trying to get ahead of yourself, you lose focus on the thing that you need to worry most about, which is just getting better, every opportunity you have. It's like that scene in Apollo 13 where, Tom Hanks says, we're on step 6 and you're talking about step 498. Like you can't allow yourself to get distracted by, oh, geez, look at this big picture. And again, this is where a coach is involved in managing his roster to make sure it doesn't get distracted, because it is easy for kids who, they start to feel the stress, especially anymore with social media and everything. They'll hear people say, you're not going to the tournament. You don't have any quality wins. You're a bad team. You're this, you're that. And so suddenly they start scrolling through some bracketology and like, oh man, nobody thinks we're going to the tournament. Boy, this is bad. It's January 19th and we're not in the tournament. What do we do? Is it too late? How, are we losing this? Are we losing that? Like that's where, the leadership piece comes in, the connectedness, all that stuff. But it's a lot of that is on a coach to manage his team's sort of psyche and his team's, mental approach. But there really is just like nothing you can do except, just keep coming. I think I told this story last week, the Dimitri Young story where, somebody said, Dimitri, is there really nothing that you can do to be a better hitting team, to just, whatever? He's like, no, you just have to come in every day and, in the cages, film work, study your pitchers, study your keys, get better, work with the coaches, all that. And, over time, that process will pay off. And somebody said, like, so there's no magic formula? And he said, well, I guess Bud Selig kind of ruined that for us, didn't he? And his point, obviously, he was referring to the whole steroids rules changes. And his point was there were no skipping steps. Yes, maybe there was a time where everybody could just kind of get on a team-wide, like nobody talk about what we're doing in the training room before the game kind of thing. But there are no skipping steps. And the minute you try to, try to jump up, 3 rungs up the ladder is the minute you slip and fall and bang your face and all the other cliches. So, and I know people don't want to hear that. I get it. Like I understand that's not satisfactory to people, but like it's every coach in every sport will tell you that's the only thing you can do.
Absolutely. Zach Ostman with the Indy Star. Can't thank you enough as always, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Everybody stay safe.
I'll tell you the same thing. I'll tell Bob Kravitz, go out and shovel the driveway now.
Yeah, I think it's lightening up, but we got an e-learning day, so we're gonna have to figure out that with school, but we'll get there.
Zach Ostman from Indy Star. Make sure you give him a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with the Todd Father right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
The CEO of MyJumpShot.com.
That's right. The janitor of MyJumpShot.com too.
Look up there in the corner.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
Turn that camera sideways.
I can't. It'll fall off my thing.
Oh, gotcha. Well, it actually makes my jump shot stick out a little more today anyway.
Perfect.
So
yeah, perfect.
Now, is that a picture of you?
No, it's a stock photo.
I just wondered.
I actually like it.
Tried to.
The guy that I had do it is not terrific. He's a dude out of Evansville, like whatever. But I tried to get him to use my shot from the Final Four against Duke. So because I have like some cameraman gave me a unbelievable picture of it. And so I tried to use it and he just claimed he couldn't do it. So I said, screw it.
Got to get somebody to do that. That would be excellent.
If I get some traction rolling on it, I'll obviously spruce it up a little bit.
Man, you're out and about already.
Oh man, I'm already in Evansville.
How are the roads?
I mean, it's so windy, it's hard to tell. I mean, I can't tell if the bike's slick. It's crazy windy out.
I can't tell if it's the wind or the snow or the ice.
Yeah, I can't, honestly. Because this thing doesn't have any, I mean, it's so tall in the back, it just catches everything. Like, I don't know how truckers do it, man.
Oh, man.
I cannot imagine being a truck driver.
I can't either. Kansas. If you knew how much the wind blows just my van, I don't know how those things, especially when the trailers are empty, I don't know how they don't get blown over a lot more often. I mean, I've seen it a few times just driving, but I really don't know how they don't get blown over more often.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to going downtown today. That'll be a fun experiment.
Indy?
No, Louisville.
Oh, yeah, no, that'll suck too. I was going to say downtown Indy, I've got nothing but reports all morning long about crashes everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me right before we're getting ready to go on. I'm going to turn my car off. So
we got about 40 seconds.
All right, cool. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good on a Friday.
Oh, man.
Jim, are you guys doing post game tonight or no?
Yeah, it is an 8:30 game, by the way. You were right.
Is it? Yeah, I thought it was, but then I get confused when I see the times on my phone.
But we'll do them remote anyway.
All right, here we go, guys.
Our financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this beautiful and snowy Friday here in January, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, joined now by the Todd Father, Todd Leary. How are you, sir?
Great. Terrific. Hold on, before you even get me off track and ask me any questions, I always mean to ask you this. What are those numbers on the wall behind you? Those are not like marathon numbers, right?
Hell no.
Because I'm calling straight bullshit if you're going to act like those are marathon numbers.
No, I wouldn't want to run across the street, man. What are you kidding me?
Understood. I know you well enough to know that's fine.
Rodeo back numbers, man. Rodeo days. Woo.
Understood. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should have known that.
But that's funny. No, running. I hated running. God, did I hate long distance running. Always
And
did.
definition of long
sprinter.
distance meaning 40 yards?
Or anything longer than here to the car.
Yeah, I get it.
Absolutely. But no, you had that one nailed dead on. Before I get to anything else, myjumpshot.com. A new venture by Todd, and it's something that has probably been due for a while. First of all, because everything that we do, you can tell that Todd is a student of the game. Always has been. He didn't have a choice when he played college. He was forced to be a student of the game because that was demanded by Bob Knight. But that is just something that has stayed with you. I mean, you can just tell you're always studying the things that the average person doesn't see and doesn't even know how to understand.
Well, I mean, honestly, one of the things that annoyed Coach Knight, I think, about me the most, and there's a healthy list there, but one of the things was I was not good at accepting being told to do something without understanding why or how. And that's kind of always been my thing. I don't know why I don't love it, but I kind of have to understand why. And so I always remember this specific example of Coach Dockich working with us on shooting. And I'll say we were working on technical aspect, but he was showing us something to do. And really the thing was it was a really simple thing that we were doing. And all of us, Pat Graham, Calvert, myself, Greg Graham, I think Damon was there then. I don't think Brian Evans was there yet, but I can remember us all sitting there working on it. We were all like, oh my gosh, how's no one ever shown me this before? And I was like, why does that work, Danny? And he's like, I don't know why. It just does. And I couldn't accept that. Like I had to keep watching everybody and watching why it worked. Why and eventually I think I figured it out. And that made sense to me more at that point. But that's kind of the way I am with watching people's jump shots. And I think if you sit down and shooting is, if I teach you to shoot technically perfectly, are you going to be a great shooter if you don't have any touch whatsoever? And the answer to that's no. But I mean, I'll use a good example. Matt Nover, complete bricklayer. Guy has zero touch whatsoever. Should have been a blacksmith. But he was a pretty good shooter because he technically did most everything right. Now, he would have been a great shooter had he had good touch. He just didn't have good touch. He was a bricklayer. But he worked on doing that, and he actually became a really good shooter, but he could never be Steph Curry. He could never be that great because he doesn't have great hand-eye coordination and all that. But I hate to use his name as an example, but I just specifically remember him. With guys, I just hate seeing people not do things. They're working against themselves. They're not doing things fundamentally correct.
What's the biggest flaw? The easiest, the thing you like all the time. I'll tell you
the thing. 75% of basketball players today that are under the age of 30 look at the ball immediately after it leaves their hand. They take their eyes off.
You said that the other night, and I'm like, why? Why would you do that?
And no one can give you an answer. The only answer you'll get that could somewhat make sense is I want to see like the rotation of the ball, make sure it's spinning correctly. But that's what practice is for. If you want to stand there and shoot 5 free throws that way, fine. But don't let yourself develop a habit. And that's where I think guys go wrong and they develop the habit. And I'll tell you this. Look, it is straight up fact. Steph Curry does it. But when people shoot the way Steph Curry does, they can look at whatever they want. They can look at the moon if they want to. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But when you're not that good, don't use his same. That's like saying, because LeBron can jump X whatever, like, you should be able to do that. Well, you can't. Like, you're not LeBron. And so don't compare yourself to the best in the world when you don't have the same hand-eye coordination or fundamentals.
And I'm not trying to pick on him, Trey Galloway. He has had just a terrible time at the free throw line this year. And that's where you would expect guards. They're going to be, at worst, they're going to be 70% just because they're guards.
At worst.
Shooters.
Right.
And that's not the case. And it's not like this was the same as last year, because this is different than last year. So something between then and now has changed, it seems. Or it would seem.
You know, I think you could go back and look at Trey's fundamentals. And honestly, I think they've changed a little bit almost every year. Some positively, some negatively. I think last year, you know, he shot his best percentage. But at the beginning, I'm just not sure you would say he had the best form last year, better than this year. I don't really know. I'll tell you this, like, he has an obvious flaw I can't believe isn't fixed, but they don't, like, for whatever reason, it's not fixed. And so, but I mean, I could go right down the list of guys that have major flaws in their jump shot at Indiana University, but Indiana's not, like, I'm not picking on Indiana or Trey or anybody. Like, there are a lot of people who don't focus on the, you know, the fundamentals of doing the little things and getting better. And that's why it's hodgepodge. Like, some games are going to shoot really well and some games they're not.
Yeah, and I've always wondered when you see them all the time, and there's one on Indiana's team at least, the guy that's, you know, he's got this shot that he's shooting from the left side of his ear over or whatever. I was never a great basketball player, but when I did play, I tried to emulate what looked proper, right, as proper as I could from a visual standpoint. And like I said, when I see those guys that I'm like, what the hell? Where do you get that from? Why do you think that would ever work? Why would you ever think that would work?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, look, Jim, let's simplify it as much as possible. You want the ball to be rotating pretty close to perfectly. You don't want any side spin or rotation on the ball. So think about how you've got to hold your hand in order to make sure that ball doesn't have any side spin or rotation. And the minute you start moving it in front of your face and things like that, think about how your hand's going to follow through. It's impossible to have good rotation. And the real problem with that is you can't be consistent. Sometimes you're going to move the ball a little bit farther over. Sometimes and so you see, like, my elbows flaring out as I'm doing that. Like, all of these things, like, you're always taught. Yeah, I was always taught, elbow underneath the basketball. Well, my elbow's not underneath the basketball. Like, that just the makeup of my body, that doesn't work. Like, it's relatively underneath the basketball, but it's not right. Jordan Holes is probably about the only person I know that's a great shooter that's hand is directly underneath the ball. Like, that's just not normal and comfortable for a lot of people. If my hand's directly under the ball, my hand is actually at a little bit of an angle. Like, the makeup of my body's a little bit different. And that's what I feel like I'm good at, and recognizing the way someone's body is and the way their arms hang and the way their hands are and how they're going to consistently be able to shoot the basketball. And that's why I don't want anybody's jump shot to look like mine. I don't want it to look like Pat Graham's. I don't want it to look like Steph Curry's. I want them to, let's work together, create their own shot that's going to be the most easy to repeat. And that way they're going to be the most consistent shooter.
And with myjumpshot.com that you've started, and this is for kids that are young, especially because there's no time that's better than when the younger you are, the easier it is to either not have bad habits or to get out of bad habits as soon as possible, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, think about it. If you've got a flaw or several flaws in your shot, and you're 10 years old to 20 years old, you're going to shoot thousands, tens of thousands of shots perfecting that bad habit. And you're going to get better at it for sure, but you're not going to be as good a shooter as you could be if you just did some technical little things right. And I'll tell you, if you want to check my stats, I will promise you right now, you go to any youth gym this weekend and watch the basketball games and watch the kids. Don't watch whether the ball goes in or not. It doesn't matter. Watch when the ball leaves their hand. Free throws are the easiest to do it because they're standing still and it's easy to watch. But watch how many players look at the ball right after it leaves their hand. And there is no answer as to why that is beneficial for you. It's not. There's zero answer they could give you.
And you talk about when you were in school at IU that they did work on shooting, and you did talk about shooting. Why is that not something that's done today, in your opinion?
You know, I honestly, I'll just say the times are different, times or whatever. Like, you know, I remember after practice, Coach Knight was really big. We practiced on the floor. I think we took pride in the fact that we practiced as little on the floor during the Big Ten season as anyone in the country. Now, we watched more film than everyone in the country, but we were physically on the floor practicing hard up and down, working on specific things. Unless we got out rebounded by a million or something we were working on specifically for maybe an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes at most. So Coach was real big on pre-practice shooting and working out and post-practice shooting and working out. And we did a lot of that stuff. And we were on the floor kind of working with each other. And I would have no problem going, Pat, look at my jump shot. Like, I am missing everything. Like, nothing feels right. And you know, Jim, it's very similar to the golf swing. Like, you know, you can go out one day and it's just so easy. Like, you're hitting all the greens and, you know, might not putt well or whatever, but your score is not terrible because your swing feels good. And the next day you can look like a buffoon out there. And I'm not saying you in particular, me. I'm a great
I look like
example
a
of that.
buffoon all the time. It doesn't change. That day does not.
Yeah.
That good day that you just talked about, I do not know what you
It happens.
of.
It happens, or you would quit. That's for sure. You hit that one good shot that you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, one good shot. Yes,
if that's all it takes. But I mean, you know,
man.
working on things together. Like we liked tinkering with things like that, and I think it made us all better for it. I don't know that the guys don't do that anymore. I'll tell you this. I tell you this a lot. I've known Trey Galloway since he was a first grader, kindergartner, I think, and. You know, he's a guy I think that would love someone to tinker with his shot just a little bit, just to help him. I don't think he knows what his problem is right now. And, you know, this is one thing I want to say, then I'll get off of this, I promise. But CJ Gunn, if you ask CJ Gunn to describe his jump shot to you, okay, just write down the things that you think it is. And then he watched it close up on film. Look like what he thinks it looks like. That I can guarantee you.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for a lot of people because they think they're doing something that they're really not, or they're doing something that they don't realize
they don't realize that they're doing it, for sure. CJ Gunn, just to say it straight up, CJ Gunn, half of the basketball. So think about it. You know, you and I were talking about shooting. Half of the basketball for CJ Gunn is on the left side of his face. The ball is farther on the left side of his face than the right side of his face. Impossible to be consistent shooting the ball the way he does doing that. It's impossible. And it's an easy fix. He doesn't know he does it. I guarantee it.
Let's take a quick break. The Todd Father is with us. Indiana on the road at a place that has not been friendly, to say the least. And that's something that Todd doesn't know about because during his days, it was quite the opposite. I think a 31-game winning streak on the road up there. But we've got Todd Leary with us, back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this. Brought to you by MyJumpShot.com.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market, I think that should pick up.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
And with today's technology.
Just after yesterday, the article yesterday, I had like 8 people. Now, a couple of them were just asking me questions, but I had like 8 people wanting to do it and said, yeah.
You want to be the new studio sponsor? The MyJumpShot.com studios? Since we're moving away from Eagle Point.
Are we? Are you moving away from Eagle Point?
Well, I'm not moving, just the studio sponsor.
So you're not getting free golf anymore?
No, but that's all right. I'll just go over to the country club.
All right, will you?
Oh, yeah.
You know people over there?
Well, I belong there, so.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I'm like, really?
That's awesome.
5 years, man.
5 years what?
Come on, sounds good. The myjumpshot.com studios. Maybe
I need to get it. Well, if things work out right, I'm gonna have I'll have the studio in Bloomington, so that'll work out great.
Well, there you go.
Oh, do you have to go far today?
Murray.
Man,
Murray,
there just
Kentucky?
ain't no good way to get there is all.
That's
Well, I
easy.
guess
it's an easy drive.
It's just right down the turnpike, I guess.
yeah.
Turnpike.
Never get off the interstate. I never
Turnpike.
hit a light the whole way down there. It's perfect.
Parkway.
Well, I guess after I get past Henderson. How long we got, John?
Got about 60 seconds.
All right. I'll just make sure I turn my car back off. It's just freezing if I.
Yeah, that stinks. Got to wait there
Yeah.
and freeze during the segment.
No,
If you want to keep it on, I don't hear anything. If you
don't?
think there's noise coming through.
Okay, cool.
There you go. Fred says, but Matt Nover could act. Who called that? They did just have the 30th celebration of that
Up at
anniversary
Frankfurt,
of that.
the gym. I saw that.
Matt tweeted that out, and I retweeted it and said, Matt, do you still have the tractor? I should have said, does your dad still have the tractor? I guess.
That's right. That's right.
But his dad probably he's retired, so
He
wouldn't
wanted
be
the bag of
using that.
cash, right? He wanted the bag of cash.
That's right.
All right, here we go, guys.
Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday. It is game day for Indiana as they have traveled to Madison, Wisconsin to take on the 5-1 Big Ten leading Badgers at the Kohl Center, which has been more like a cold center for IU shooting. I don't know why, but 27 failed attempts, I believe, Todd. I can't even fathom that being a possibility to any team. Hell, Indiana's gone to Purdue and won, which is a lot harder place to play, I would think, over 27 years. But, man, for whatever reason, it's just one of those weird things.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't have a point of reference, so no, I can't really explain it. Other than I don't think it really has a lot to do with like flukes or streaks or things like that. I mean, this team just unfortunately, there's been several times Wisconsin wasn't even that great of a team, and Indiana got off to great starts, and for whatever reason they've blown it up there. And you know, the interesting part is Wisconsin is kind of you know, I'll call it a dumbed down version of what Indiana wants to be. I mean, they're just fundamental. They just wear you out and beat you to death and physical you and block out. And, you know, they don't generally have the best athletes in the world, but they have good basketball players. And that's kind of what Indiana maybe used to be a little bit of, probably a upgraded version of that. But, you know, I don't want to throw guys like Calvert and Greg Graham and those into a non-athletic categories. But, you know, Wisconsin doesn't beat themselves. And in the last 20 years, Indiana has done a decent job of beating themselves, especially in that arena.
Yeah, you mentioned something all the time when we talk about when we do the post-game shows, basketball IQ. And it seems like Wisconsin just stays pretty level in that area. There's not a lot of up and down with that. They play smart basketball. And that's a huge difference when you continually year in, year out, do things smarter. You work harder, not smarter, or work harder, whatever the phrase is.
Smarter, not harder.
Smarter, not harder. Yeah. And which has been the case, that's something I see out of Wisconsin. They're always just even keeled when it comes to basketball IQ.
Yeah, they don't beat themselves. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. Like if you go watch the AAU circuits, there are always I'm going to give credit to like the youth coaches in the whole state, or not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them, because we would play against Wisconsin teams and they were almost always pretty fundamentally sound. Like they've watched the videos, they've got guys working in rotations and defense, and they're just fundamentally sound. And I think it's trickled up to, where it's at, and the guys who play at Wisconsin, the coaches there, those guys are just smart, not going to beat themselves. I mean, I know that's a cliche statement. I'll tank on with Zach Osterman there with our cliches, but I mean, they don't beat themselves. There's a lot to that. Now, do you go beat the Purdue's of the world and the Kansases of the world doing that? That's where that's where they struggle, I'll say. But they don't struggle against the Indianas of the world, obviously, in the last 30 years.
Indiana has enough talent to play with teams. We've seen them play with Kansas, and for a bit they played with Purdue until they didn't. But this is a team that has 13 games left in this season. And even though Kent Palm has projected them to lose 12 of them, that's a projection. And that's a projection based on what has happened prior to today. Right. It's up to them to change that projection. And if they don't, it's going to be a pretty dire season. But the opportunity is there and the talent is there.
Yeah, those opportunities, they're in a great position from the standpoint of being able to prove people wrong and be a lot better than what they are, or what they're projected to be. And if you look at this team, I would say we are up there with one of the most talented. What are we? 15-7, 13-7, something like that.
12-6, I think.
Is it physically talent, like that walks out on the court? Athletically, I think that we are, one of the best teams in the country with that record. Now, from an actual fundamental, like shooting the basketball perspective, basketball IQ perspective, I think that's where we struggle. I think, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone. I'm only going off of what the product that I see out there on the court. And when they're making mistakes like they're mistaking, this is something I was listening to Zach talk, and you were talking about coaches and their preparations and things like that. And man, think about this. I know you love this quote, and so do I. But think about this. Going into the season, the team had, the coaches had what they thought would kind of play, how they thought this team would grow throughout the season and where they would be and all that. And so they had a plan. And what happens with a plan when you get smacked in the mouth? and they had a plan, and they got smacked in the mouth. And they've been smacked several times, and they're still standing. They're still up, but they're they're wearing down. And right now they've got to show some major improvement, and they've got to do some things better. They've got to consistently do those things better. I will say, if you take talent-wise and you look at the guys that are going to walk out on the court, Indiana, except for their next game against Purdue, Indiana is as capable of winning that game, or as physically talented as everyone they're going to be up against. And I think that's the case for every team in the Big Ten except for Purdue. Purdue's built different, but I would say that I'm not just ripping Indiana and praising Purdue. Edey makes them different. Like, they're different. No one matches up with them. No one. So Indiana, physically, talent walking out on the court, is as good as any team in the Big Ten except for Purdue.
I saw a stat yesterday, and there were more than enough possessions for this to be right in there, that Indiana, with Gabe Cupps in the starting lineup, they are the 5th most efficient offense in the country, which is a little mind-boggling.
It is. That stat, like, that kind of tells you that stat's goofy, because I think Gabe Cupps is fantastic. I think that he is going to be a 4-year outstanding player at Indiana. I don't think this team is at its best when Gabe Cupps is on the floor without Xavier Johnson. Like, I think the two of them together could be a good combo. But I don't think, when I said the plan for this team and they got punched in the mouth, Xavier is a big part. He's one of those big punches. I mean, he has not lived up to what the coaching staff was really banking on him being for this team. And I think Gabe Cupps is a capable fill-in at this point. I think at some point in his career, he's going to be a major focus for other teams. But right now, he's just a filler.
And I agree with you that actually should be the reality. But for whatever reason, Xavier has not been the Xavier. And with him not being Xavier, it has allowed for that stat, as crazy as it is, to become a reality. And it's not because they're so great. Then it's just they become bad with Xavier. He does the deal at Rutgers. Then he turns around and does, he tries to give Zach Edey the forearm shiver. I'm like, what are you thinking?
Well, yeah. And part of, there's 8 layers or 20 layers as to why what he did at Rutgers was a bad whole situation. But one of those is it puts a spotlight on you for every game, not just every game, but every screen and every single time you have physical contact with another person.
Every official.
Highlights it. Right. It highlights it. And so are they watching you different? Sure they are. Should they be? Sure they should. I get it. If this was a player on another team, what's the goofball that was from Wisconsin
Duke?
That married the girl from
I thought
IU?
Davidson.
That played at Wisconsin. Yeah, Davidson. I mean, this is one of his situations. Like, he created that situation for himself, and Xavier's done it on, just a different level. And when I say Davidson is a goofball, it's out of respect because I hated the fact that he was there for 18 years and how good he was. Like, he beat our brains in. And I hope players on other teams take it with respect when you hate them, because if I hate them, it's because they're pretty good.
I did see that there was someone granted an 8th year of eligibility.
So I read it as 9th. Like, I thought it was a joke. I thought they were kidding.
Well, I think it is
9th.
From
Miami? Is that the kid from Miami?
I'm trying to get that pulled up. Yeah.
It was his 9th year. His name's Cam McCormick. And the reason he has 9 years is because apparently, I think it was when he was at Oregon, he suffered 4 straight season-ending injuries.
Wow.
Okay.
This guy is my age. I'm 26 years old. I was in the high school class of 2016. That's when this guy graduated high school.
Someone earlier said he's got kids in school, for God's sake.
Hey, we got some sophomores that got kids in school, for Christ's sake.
Well,
maybe
there's hope for you, some more eligibility.
I mean, here's what's weird. I mean, okay, hey, God bless. I hope he stays healthy and everything works out. But I mean, isn't that just kind of like that's unfortunate? There's a lot of guys who would like. I mean, Pat Graham could still be playing if that were the case. I mean, this guy had season-ending injuries all the time. Like, can we get Alan Henderson's year back that we lost him? Like, what? I don't understand it. Like, it sucks for that guy injury-wise. I don't root for that, for even people that I don't root for. But man, how can that be okay?
This guy should be a doctor, no less.
What happens? So what happens if he gets hurt again?
Does it again?
Do they give him a 10? Do they give him another one?
That's crazy.
When does it stop?
Yeah. The NCAA has become so they're pointless. I mean, they've always been goofy, but they have just become pointless. Because people talk about worrying about a second transfer. Screw that. You got a guy that's in his ninth year. There probably aren't many pro teams that have had a guy for 9 consecutive seasons on their roster of any sort. NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA. I mean, how many teams have had a guy for 9 years? Steph Curry, maybe.
And just think about physically and your body, getting bigger and stronger and all those things. Think about right now, there are kids who reclassify up. So there's going to be 17-year-olds playing against a 26-year-old. Like, he's got a scholarship and a mortgage. That's nice, Brian.
That's funny.
No, NIL probably paid off his mortgage. He's good.
Oh, that's crazy. But yeah, Indiana has to take on the Wisconsin Badgers tonight, the Big Ten leading Badgers, a place they have not done well, and this is going to stress them. But after that, Indiana has almost a week off before they have to go back on the road to face an Illinois team that, even without Terrence Shannon, and we'll talk about this next week, of course, but they have played a lot better than most people thought that they would after losing Terrence Shannon.
Yeah, they really have. You know, they were a well-constructed team. Like they've done well in the portal for the last couple of seasons. They've had some guys come in that have done a good. Terrence Shannon being one of them that have been very big, impactful players. Brad Underwood, I think, does a pretty good job coaching them and getting them, you know, ready to play. And he doesn't take a bunch of crap off of their players. And you know, it's these two games they could be a train wreck nightmare. Like this is one thing I hate about where the program, I guess, is right now. I mean, this could be a train wreck. Like they could lose these next two games by 20 each, and man, that'll be a bummer. But they're also very capable of winning these games. And Wisconsin's, I'm going to say it again. I say this every year, and they prove me wrong every year. But Wisconsin's not great. Like, they're okay. They're fundamental. They're good. They're not going to beat themselves. We're going to have to do some good things to beat them, but they're not that great. And Illinois is helter-skelter. I mean, they could either beat you by 20 or lose by 20. Like, they are not – I don't think they're the most mentally tough team in the world. And so you could get in their brain too, especially if you can get a lead on them. And they'll take some really bad shots if you get them behind. But that's two games that, yes, I think we're capable of winning them. I won't say that about every game, but I think these two games we are capable of winning them. Unfortunately, 2024 Indiana University basketball team, we're capable of losing them both by 22.
And not that you had to go through this when you were playing, but this team going to a place where it's not like they have not heard the fact that Indiana has not won there since before any of them were born.
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, no kidding. Trey Galloway and possibly Xavier Johnson are the only two players who that even crosses their brain. And I know we talk about it a lot. I know with social media, they probably read it on Twitter more or whatever it is, but they don't think about it. They don't care. They weren't responsible for those. You know, Mbako doesn't know anything about the last 20 losses that are there or whatever. Neither does Khalil Ware. Malik Renew didn't win there last year, but I mean, this is his second opportunity. You don't think about that as a player near as much as we make it a big deal as fans. And when it starts to pile up 27 years in a row, yeah, it does become a big deal at that point.
Yeah, and I can't say it really does anything to the program, but it's just one of those things that really makes you scratch your head.
You don't want to be anybody's whipping boy. Like I say this all the time, and you can say the teams weren't as good, but I mean, you can put some good rosters together. But I never lost a game home or away to Wisconsin or Northwestern or Penn State, although we came close on that one. I never lost to any of those teams home or away. Do I say we took those games? Were those games not as fun? Yeah, they weren't as fun. Like, I liked playing Michigan on the 3:30 CBS game on, on a weekend. Like, we like the fun, big games. Were they as big a games? No, not really. Like, I'm sure that's probably how Wisconsin looks at Indiana now. None of these guys that are there right now have ever sniffed losing to Indiana. Think about that. Like, that's what?
Amazing.
That's the difference.
Todd Leary, the Todd father. Make sure you're careful out there today, my friend.
Yes, sir. We'll do it.
We will see you later. Todd Leary with myjumpshot.com. Don't forget, if you've got a kid or anyone you know, family member that needs to work on that, just go to myjumpshot.com. John Boy, what a fun show, as always. Our good friend Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. Zach Ostman from the Indy Star, and the Todd father, of course, from After the Game with Todd Leary, that you should be able to see tonight after Indiana takes on Wisconsin up in
Madison this evening, trying to break that 27-year streak that is just a head scratcher. Wouldn't that be a shocker if this was the team to do that?
It would be. And I feel like Indiana's the kind of program that something like this would happen for some reason. And again, that's just me and my thoughts. But if you're a betting person, I said this earlier, take the Hoosiers to cover tonight. I think the spread's at 10. Maybe get it down to a half a point so you don't have to worry about the push, and maybe you'll make some money on Indiana tonight. We'll see.
You're a brave man, my friend.
I'm actually not. I myself, I've got a different parlay in the works, but I may include that one. We'll see.
Mr. Better all of a sudden. How about that?
It's fun. When you have disposable income, it's fun.
Big thanks to Bob Kravitz, of course, and Zach Osterman, as well as Todd Leary. But most importantly, thanks to each and every one of you. Without you, we've got no reason to be here, and it is an honor and a privilege, and we are grateful for it. Thanks to John, producer, for keeping us between the white lines as well. Until tonight, after the Indiana-Wisconsin game, for after the game with Todd Leary, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports